Hello world, my name is Ihor and this is another techno recipe. And today we are cooking techno kick and rumble loops with the tiny modular system and the Octatrack. Well, the Octatrack is here to really mix the techno kick and rumble loop with other techno loops that I got from Techno Foundation sample pack from Loopmasters. Also, I'm going to make a small sample pack with these techno kick and rumble loops and share it on my Patreon page. So if you're interested, go to patreon.com/Ihor, check those tiers and consider becoming my patron. You will also get access to our Discord community. One of the most common ways to make a techno kick and rumble loop is to use delay and reverb with your kick drum source. So basically today we will need a kick drum source and then some processing of that kick drum, maybe adding some saturation, distortion, maybe some filtering and stuff like that. Then actual delay that is going to create this bouncy, rumbling, kick drums, and filter that after delay is going to filter out all the high-end frequencies. And then we will need some mixing tools, perhaps with ducking or sidechain compression to mix the dry kick drum with our rumble already after the delay. Maybe some multi-band processing if possible. Then a nice touch would be to add some texture on top of it. And at the end, to have a compressor to compress a little bit. And also, which is quite important, to have some metering or indication of the loudness. With this in mind, I have 3 different patch ideas to explore. Let's do it. Nice. And our very first patch today is pretty much focused on my favorite module to make rumbles is Electus Versio. Because that's not quite delay, not quite reverb, and that's exactly what we need. It also gives us mixing possibilities and the ducking effect, which is amazing. But let me first break down the patch real quick, and I'll start with sequencing because that's gonna remain pretty much the same. So the Octatrack is our main clock today. It sends MIDI into this MIDI 1U module over here, and then it clocks the steppy and also gives the run signal to steppy so that we can start and stop the sequence. And then from the steppy, we've got one track going into the Mandrake, which is our kick source. And for the sequencing is gonna stay pretty much the same through all the patches. With one exception here, I'm clocking the Electus Versio here, also from the same clock. For the audio path, I've got first module over here, which is Mandrake, is going to be our main kick source, and it's going to remain here as well throughout all the patches. This is a new kick drum module from a new company called Malstrom from the Netherlands. Quite amazing module, has quite a lot of control to shape your kick drum to how you want it to be. And it's mainly focused on the techno, house, and other electronic dance music. Very much like this one, and if you're interested, you can check the link in the description. And then output from the Mandrake goes into the Paradigm, which is a distortion module from Cosmotronic. Then output from here goes into the Polaris. This is going to be our phaser today to emphasize some frequencies. And then output from Polaris goes into the Electus Versio, which is going to be our main rumble generator, and as I mentioned before, it features pretty much everything what we need. The filter, the mixing, and also the ducking, and then it's also clocked, which can create different kinds of rumbles, and we can find the one that we really need. And then in stereo already, we go into the Ruina Versio. Ruina Versio is going to stay here as well throughout all the patches. Pretty much we're going to be changing only these 3 modules. And Ruina Versio is here to add some texture because it has very nice distortion circuits or algorithms, and it also has a multi-band drive that we can utilize. And then it goes into the Mesor. This is a compressor from Cosmotronic as well, and this one also features very nice metering. I can really see when I'm loud or if I'm not as loud as I want it to be, because under this threshold knob there is a LED, and if it's orange, it means that the compression is working, and if it's blue, it's just the dry signal goes over it. It's quite handy and important for me to have it over here. And then the output from the Cosmotronic Mesor goes into the output 1U module over here, and then from the case it goes into the Octatrack track 7. And here on the Octatrack I set up one scene that introduces the high-pass filter on our incoming signal from here, and also increases the volume of the incoming signal. And in that way, we can control the energy and, drop the low end for a bit and then bring it back. And now let's start the clock and work on our techno kick and rumble. So I'm gonna put a couple of triggers, basically 4 on the floor. So on the Mandrake, we have frequency and then pitch decay and pitch modulation that can shape the power of our kick drum. We need some kind of like techno-y, right? Maybe lower frequency, saturation. We can also introduce the hit or the transient. This is the volume and this is the shape. Decay. We don't really need the long one. Also, damping is quite an interesting function. It can create some very interesting variations of your kick drum because it influences quite a few parameters like saturation and the resonance and how they are dumping over the decay of the kick drum. Also, I'm using this clean circuit here. This one cuts off all the very low end from the kick, like lower than 25 Hertz or something, and also introduces a notch filter at 300 or something like that, which basically makes the kick drum a little bit cleaner. So the next one we have the paradigm, which is distortion. Let me bring plus 6 dB, and then we can blend it in. Nice. And here I would like to add some high texture to it. Yo, let's maybe blend it halfway through. Low. Okay. I very much like this one because it has multi-band distortion processing. So for the phaser here, I just try to find a place where it's gonna sound kind of very large and keep it as such. And now the emitter, or Electus Versio actually. So I'm gonna bring the blend. Not many things have changed, but because we have to introduce the feedback. And if we bring the feedback in, we can hear the delay lines going around. And then we obviously have a filter over here, which is exactly what we need. But also before going into the filter, I'd like to switch it into the distortion mode. It's gonna create the delay lines. They're gonna be louder and a bit distorted. And then we can play around with different effects or how these delay lines are related to each other. I would like to keep them in the center, actually. And then an interesting part with feedback over here, or regen, if you pass 1 o'clock or like 12 o'clock, all the delay lines they going into the infinite field. But then if you pass the 3 o'clock, you can notice that these LEDs changing a little bit in the color. Like here, there is no blue, but here it is blue. What it does the delay with incoming signal. And this is exactly what we need for our mixing, right? Then again, I'm gonna go find a nice ducking amount. We don't need too much because it's gonna duck too much, obviously. We need something over here so that we can still hear the delay lines. I don't even think we have to change the time, but for the dance, by the way, here's the reference to the Electus Versio. So I sometimes print such things so that I do not mess up the parameters. So dance, it can spread it a little bit in the stereo field, but here we also have to be a bit careful because it's a low end, right? And now let's filter down to That's already very nice sounding rumble to me. Maybe a bit louder. Still hear this high end. Yeah, that's fine. And now we have Versio. This one I would like to introduce just a tiny touch and then use the multi-band saturation or drive to bring some kind of crunch or whatever, you name it. So I'm gonna bring in here. Also, it's quite important to find the phase parameter that is in the center that does not influence the phase over here, because it can really mess up the low end as well. Also, if I switch this switch into the track, it's going to introduce the notch filter over here at the center of the drive band. I know it's confusing, but yeah. And then with this drive, this is a multi-band drive processor, we can select which band we would like to focus it on. Like basically here it's going to be focused on very low end, and I don't really need it. I think our low end is fine. But if we go over here, I think it's very good. And now let's octavize it a little bit. Fold it maybe. Just a little bit. Or maybe a bit more, but use the blend like this. And here, as you can see, we have the kick drum, which is pushing the compressor a little bit. And we have this orange going, and then stable blue, which means that there is quite a lot of also sound going, but it's not getting compressed. And that's exactly what I need. We keep gain at 0, no warm, just compress it a little bit and see that we are at correct loudness. Okay. I think that works really well so far. Now let's have a listen to this in the context of other techno loops. I think it can go a bit louder, but also I don't want to clip the input over here. Yep. Nice. Maybe not the best mixing, but the idea is to try it out and see if it works good. I think it works quite good. Nice. Okay. And now let's explore the next patch. And for the second patch, I've changed several modules. And first of all, we got bifold, which is going to be our distortion. This is actually folder. It has one input and two outputs. That's quite important because I would like to split the signal, the audio signal, and mix it or process it separately and then mix it. We got Ghost for our rumble. It has pretty much everything: distortion, compressor, delay, reverb, filter beforehand, filter afterhand, sidechain compression, and so on. And then we also got the mix-up, which is going to be our mixer. The rest pretty much stays the same. We have Mandrake as our kick drum, then the sequencing and the Versio and Mesor as our end-of-chain processing. And let me break down the patch for you real quick. So we've got sequencing pretty much stays the same, but instead of Electus, we clock the Ghost. And also I got the output B from Steppy going into the ducking effect or sidechain effect on the Ghost. and we have to replicate the triggers here. I was lazy enough not to mount the output A. Since I have many output, that's fine. Then the audio path, Mandrake, goes into the bifold. Output P or folder P goes into the Ghost. This folder is less aggressive than folder S. That's why I would like to use it for our Rumble. And then output S goes directly into the mixer, into the input 1. Then the Ghost has stereo output that goes into the input 3 of the mix-up, and then everything mixed goes into the Ruina, from Ruina into Mesor, and so on, back into the Octatrack. And now let's start the sequence. And first of all, here is our kick drum. It goes through folder. We can go quite crazy here, or super quiet here, but I would like to leave it somewhere over here. Pretty much the same settings from the previous patch, I'm fine with them. And now I would like to introduce the Ghost, which is in track 3. And so far, not many things happening, because we would like to introduce some delay. And delay I'm gonna set into 5/4. Over here. Then some reverb. Longer tail, but not too much. Basically, I'm gonna go full wet on the delay because we don't really need any dry signal going there. Maybe a bit louder. Some compression. Distortion. Not too much. And now we can filter out all the high end. And we got our rumble going. Maybe some resonance to emphasize it a bit more. And now we also have this trigger for sidechain compression. Again, too much is gonna just destroy the sound and make it super quiet, but we have to find a nice combination where we still get the ducking, but also we have the volume going back and creating this kind of rumble. We can experiment with bandpass filter, for example. Not bad, actually. Okay, let's leave it as such. And then go back to Ruina Versio. It's in pretty much the same settings. I think it's too much of... Okay, and now let's have a listen to this in the context of hi-hats. Nice. And now let's switch to the next one. And for the third and last patch today, I've changed a couple of modules. First of all, we've got Lyra 8 effects from Soma. This is the effects unit from their Lyra 8 synthesizer. It features 2 analog delays and a distortion circuit. and this delay is not clocked, which is kind of cool. I call it a weird delay, actually. And then we've got the filter, multi-mode filter. We're going to be using it as a low-pass filter. And we have a VCA here, which we will use a little bit later. And then the mix-up stays here, and the rest of the modules actually the same: Mandrake, sequencing, Versio, and Mesor. And now let me break down the patch. So sequencing pretty much remains the same, but now we don't have any clock. Then Mandrake goes into the Lyra 8 effects, into the input. It has an input gain here, which is also quite important. And here we have two outputs as well. The first one is just delays, 100% delay output, which is quite handy to have some routing over here that goes into the filter, which we're going to use as a low-pass filter, and then goes into the track 2 of the mix-up. And then the mix output of the Lyra goes into the mix-up directly into track 1. And we have mix knob at completely 0, so there is no delay mixed into this one. So we have the dry signal and the completely wet signal, and that's amazing to mix them down later. And then the output from mix-up goes into the Ruina, and so on. So let's start the sequence and see where we're at. So we have only track 1 playing right now. So it's this output, the mix output from the Lyra. And if I introduce delay, obviously we don't need that on our main output. But then we can also use some drive over here and mix it a little bit. So drive affects both of the outputs because it stays at the end of chain of the Lyra, but that's fine, we can use that. And now let me introduce the second track. This one is delay track from the Lyra, basically this one. And now we can fine-tune a little bit the delay times. Nice. Two of the delays with different times. I think that's fine. We can also control the feedback amount. Ooh, that's super nice. And now all we need to do is filter out. Maybe bring some resonance. Touch quieter. But actually, what we are missing right now is docking. But we can repatch a little bit. So I'm gonna unpatch the low-pass output from the filter. And this one is going to input A of the VCA, and output A of the VCA goes back into the input 2 of the mix-up. And now we can utilize the envelope output of Mandrake, which is right now in the inverted envelope. So basically all the time it stays at the loudest CV or at the maximum of the CV, and then with the kick drum shape, depending on the kick drum shape, it goes into the negative territory, or actually it's not going into the negative territory, but it decreases the CV up almost to 0 and then brings it back. That's an inverted envelope. And that's exactly what we need to have our docking. So now if I run it, you can see that the LED goes like an inverted envelope, basically without the kick drum. Exactly what we need, right? Now let's add a bit of Ruina. And I think we're good to go. Again, I didn't really check the levels and everything. I'm doing everything by ear. Excuse me if that's, not working for you really well. that's pretty much it for today's video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope you've learned something new for yourself that you can apply to your own music production workflow, or at least got inspired to go and make music. There are several ways to support this channel. First of all, there is Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Ihor, check these tiers and consider becoming my patron. You'll also get access to our Discord community. Of course, you can like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment down below and hit this bell button, or actually hit that thanks button over there. All these helps this channel to get exposed to the larger audience. And if you're interested in the gear that I feature in my videos, you can also use the affiliate links in the description. And if you would like to check other patch from scratch videos or techno recipes, you can check either this video or that one. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, have fun.